because I repositioned. But if I move, I would just move here. Yes. I don't know. I think he made it to the back.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We're going to worship the Lord. I want to invite everyone from the hallway to come in. We're going to start worshiping the Lord. We're going to sing the song, In Him We Move and Have Our Being, amen? So if you can't sing this with me, because in Him do I live, moving and I be. Come on, you sing that. Sing. Do I live, moving and I be. Come on, sing that. Say, in Him do I live, moving and I be. Sing. In Him do I live, moving and I. Here we go. Here we go. Sing. worthy is the Lamb.
Amen. Yeah.
Worthy is the Lamb, amen. Say, worthy is the Lamb. Say it again one more time. Worthy is the Lamb. I had to sit back and just take it all in. Thank you so much, Joy, and the praise team for the wonderful work that you're doing here. Prepare us for everything that God is going to be doing here today as He visits with us and allows us to share with you, and then you share back with us. And I was thinking this morning of exactly what's coming to mind. I said yesterday, lion chasers. Today, I'm thinking Gideon, and we're not unlike Gideon. And Gideon was the remnant that God used, and He moved mightily. Amen.
Amen.
And we're all part of that remnant. And regardless of what we see today, or in the world today, know that we as the remnant can stand tall.
Yes.
And God will move. Amen. He will move. Okay, I'm looking at the list here. We've got some great speakers planned today. Last night was, I don't know if they still say off the chain, but I'm dating myself. But it was powerful for me, just taking it all in, and I'm sure you all were doing that as well. And today is no different. In fact, today's going to be even more action-packed. And Brother Eric, you and your lovely bride pulled something together that I believe is going to go forth and have some major impact in our nation today and in the days to come as we go into an election year next year. Amen? All right, I believe we have it's a video clip that we have prepared. I'm going to announce our next speaker.
At no other time in American history have fights to uphold our nation's founding principles required our undivided attention. As a result of our nation's rapidly declining moral and ethical standards, it is clear that America's conservative movement must reach beyond traditional base if it is ever to regain the influence it once knew. David Horowitz once quoted a radical student saying that the issue is never the issue. The issue is the revolution. You see, race, gender, and new science have been weaponized to challenge the status quo of many values and principles we've held as sacrosanct. Liberal ideology, once only promulgated in higher learning institutions, is now infiltrating our churches, grade schools, and political institutions at every level. Critical race theory, Black Lives Matter activism, gender identity politics, and proclamations of white supremacy are tools of the liberal left to fundamentally change American society and beliefs. We believe the ultimate goal of these aligned forces is to cause enough chaos to dismantle our Judeo-Christian ethics and rebuild an America stripped of any Christian influence. They will fashion a nation under the control of the state, a society run by socialism, as they sow discord and distrust amongst various races and reject Christian norms and values. The church, the natural family, and our democratic republic are under attack like never before. It is time to rise and take a stand.
Amen. Amen. Powerful video clips. It encourages me tremendously. Okay. Okay, our next speaker, and I won't go into it, and let me just mention that if you want to get the full bios on all the speakers, please go to Freedom's Journal Institute's website, and you'll find all the information there that speaks to all the speakers that are here, because their qualifications are deep and long. I'd be reading for a half hour, and brother said, don't do that. So, I'm not gonna do that. I also want to mention that you can give to this wonderful organization. It's a nonprofit. They're tax deductible, your donations, and so please, you can go to the website, Freedom's Journal Institute, and there on the website there is an area where you can donate to this organization.
Amen.
You know, it costs money to do these types of things, and for them to continue to put forth the truth. And you know, the word says about the truth will not only set you free, it will make you free. Amen.
Amen.
All right, our next guest is a tremendous brother. He's the formal Attorney General for the state of Indiana.
Supposed to
And
do the
I'd
rise
welcome to
principle.
the podium, Curtis Hill.
They're probably going to change it to
Good morning.
Good morning.
I wonder if any of you out there think that you're racist. I'm sure that no one does, and you're probably the type of people that would say that you don't have a racist bone in your body. And I'm not going to pick on you, I'm going to pick on myself, because sometimes I prejudge. Oftentimes, if I see a young black man with his pants hanging down low, and his hat on backwards, and the dreads, I start thinking, gangbanger, drug dealer. It's not really fair, but it's what I do. And sometimes when I see a white guy with a bald head, tattoos all up his neck, a little teardrop out his eye, I start thinking, white supremacist. Now, as far as I know, he could be a Sunday school teacher. That's how I think. I don't want to pick on you. But for those of you who think that maybe you don't have a racist bone in your body, I'm going to suppose a question. Suppose that there's a $25,000 prize to solve a great math question. And you want that $25,000 prize. And you have an option of picking a helper. And one helper is white, one helper is Asian. Who are you picking? Now, that kind of puts things in perspective. That's not such a bad thing. I mean, there's a stereotype about Asians being really good at math, but that's a prejudgment. That's a stereotype. Suppose in the same example that we're in a basketball league, and it's still the $25,000 you get to win. And we've got 5 black guys and 5 Asians. Who are you picking for your team? I'm picking the tall guys. Ladies and gentlemen, the name of the summit gets directly to the heart of the matter. How do we fix Black America? Of course, that presumes that we believe that Black America is broken. Well, it is, and has been by various degrees for quite some time. Without a doubt, the past, present, and future of Black America is inextricably intertwined with the American experience, so that what you do with one will impact the other.
That's right.
So what needs fixing in America? In other words, what's wrong? Well, truthfully, if you're like me, it seems like just about everything. We're $31 trillion in debt. We have a record crime wave that's led by the social justice prosecutors who have weaponized the justice system. We seem to have mass shootings every week. Our schools are failing. We're overrun at our borders. We have red states and blue states, and everybody's a racist, and everybody's a sexist. Everybody's offended. Everybody's a victim. He's a she, she's a they. And how about safe and effective and flatten the curve? Mandatory shutdowns. Social distance. Who was it that came up with the 6 feet? Why isn't it 5 feet 5 inches? Or 6 feet 10 inches? Mask or no mask, it's for our own good. You can go to Walmart, but you can't go to church. Big government, big tech, big media has censored you fundamentally alter what it means to be American. Under the seemingly innocuous banner of so-called social justice, socialism has established a solid root in a nation built on individual freedom, and the threat to destabilize our very foundations is real. Now, to the unsuspecting, social justice kind of sounds like a good thing. We're going to make everybody equal. Everybody gets the same. I don't know about you, but I don't want the same. I want better. Socialism itself sounded good to a people who felt betrayed by the constant reminder that America hasn't always made good on this whole equality thing. In fact, economist Thomas Sowell, we saw him in the clip last night briefly, as a young man, he himself was a socialist. And when later in life he was asked why he gave up on socialism, his answer was profoundly well-reasoned. It didn't work. And it still doesn't. But that hasn't stopped the social justice movement from pushing its victimology agenda right down our throats. And its aim? To divide the people of this nation permanently through the weaponization of race, the reclassification of sex, and the destabilization, boy, I had one of those moments. Destabilization of faith and the traditional family. And while there are alternatives to traditional families, it is the traditional family. Husbands and wives, fathers and mothers, raising children together in a loving home that provides the strongest foundation and the best opportunity for succeeding generations. Faith in God, we the people, and family. So, ladies and gentlemen, the traditional family is in crisis. The divorce rate is exceeded only by the number of young people who see no value in the institution of marriage at all. And masculinity is routinely derided as toxic, unless, of course, it's used to describe a particular trait of a woman who identifies as a man. What have we done to our little boys? We're supposed to believe that women are no longer the only sex able to give birth. Birthing persons. I'm sorry, I had a mother. Well, that's okay for a male athlete who was ranked number 462 to identify and compete as a woman and win the NCAA National Championship gold medal. We're being encouraged to believe that it's okay for a 14-year-old child to mutilate her organs without her parental consent. And the very life of a child, an unborn child, continues to be targeted for destruction in a nation that loudly proclaimed the value of life 250 years ago as the first of its self-evident truths. Nowhere has the decline of the traditional family been more evident than in the black family. Prior to the big government programs of the 1960s, the black family was stable and largely intact. This, even though segregation and systemic discrimination were in full force. Fathers' homes then were 25%. We don't like that number, but it was manageable as compared to the 72% now. As the growth of big government has really done a number on Black America. And when did the tragedy of abortion become a civil right for a black woman?
Come on now.
You know, abortion is the only medical procedure where the sole objective is to kill another human being.
Yes, sir. Wow.
And with the United States population of blacks at 13%, criminal justice reformers will always protest the black incarceration rate of 38%, saying 38% compared to 13% proves that America is racist. But that 38% is an interesting number because you know where else it is? It's the percentage of black women who have abortions. Same as the incarceration rate, same disproportionate number. Where is the left on abortion being racist? No, they celebrate. They literally celebrate the death of children, in particular black children. Of the 60 million unborn babies in America over the past 50 years, 22 million were black. That's more black babies killed by abortion in 50 years than the entire population of black America in 1960. Or put another way, the 22 million babies killed represents 1/2 of the 45 million black Americans alive today. Now, someone should tell Stacey Abrams that killing 22 million black babies is the real black voter suppression. So yes, America and black America are broken. I've spent my entire legal career in public service, first as a local criminal prosecutor, and then as the Indiana Attorney General. While I'm not a preacher, I do consider myself a minister of sorts, a minister of justice. And as a minister of justice, I can tell you that I emphatically believe in America. I believe in the hope of America that is embodied within our first principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I believe in justice with no qualifiers. We don't need to talk about racial justice, social justice, economic justice. When we look at the Constitution of the United States, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, established justice. That was before all of the other things. Established justice was first. And although at times elusive, I'm still committed to justice for all, not some, not the preferred, but everyone.
Man.
Dr. Wallace asked me to speak today on responsible government. More to the point, what is government's role in fixing black America? Well, Frederick Douglass addressed a similar question when he was asked, what shall we do with the Negro? And he responded, I have had but one answer from the beginning.
Nothing.
Do nothing.
That's right.
Nothing.
That's what he said.
Your doing with us has already played the mischief with us. Do nothing with us. He went on to say, if the apples will not remain on the tree of their own strength, if they are worm-eaten at the core, if they are early ripe and disposed to fall, let them fall. I'm not the tying or fastening on the tree in any way, except by nature's plan. And if they will not stay there, let them fall. And if the Negro cannot stand on his own legs, let him fall also. All I ask is give him a chance to stand on his own legs. Let him alone. And so a responsible government would give him a chance to stand on his own and let him alone. Prior to the mid-19th century, the United States government could hardly be accused of giving blacks a chance. To the contrary, the failure to abolish slavery in conjunction with the new birth of freedom during our revolutionary years remains the single biggest whiff for freedom in the history of the world. The compromises made, though necessary as they may have been to establish a free and independent nation, nevertheless have contributed to nearly 250 years of hypocrisy and flawed legal doctrine that has scarred our republic. With the Emancipation Proclamation of 1863 and the end of the Civil War 2 years later, the United States seized the opportunity to push the restart button on its official responsibility to black America. And to their credit, Congress acted quickly with a series of amendments to the United States Constitution actually designed to fix the state of black America. First, the 13th Amendment officially abolished slavery, nearly 100 years after the Declaration of Independence, and skipped the issue. Next, the 14th Amendment was passed, extending U.S. citizenship to all persons born in the United States, which applied to most blacks. And it further guaranteed equal protection under the law. And finally, the 15th Amendment provided black men the right to vote. I don't think this made women very happy, but it was the times. The United States government had now formally recognized the constitutional rights of the black former slave as a free voting citizen with rights ostensibly equal to anyone else. Civil rights for blacks had finally been achieved. For black men anyway. But sustaining those rights would prove to be a challenge. Over the next 2 decades, nearly 2,000 black men have been elected and served in public office. Black men were beginning to stand on their own legs, as others had suggested. But they were far from being left alone. Throughout the South, state and local governments believing it to be their civic responsibility to systematically strip black men of their newfound franchise, adopted a variety of mechanisms to do just that. Poll taxes, literacy tests, grandfather clauses ultimately eliminated nearly all of the black political gains by the beginning of the 20th century. These sinister tactics were far more effective at suppressing black voter turnout than requiring a photo ID on a Georgia driver's license. Next, the law didn't mean what it said it meant. The constitutional provision, equal protection under the law, was officially revisioned in Plessy v. Ferguson as separate but equal. And race segregation of blacks became the law of the land, zealously enforced, I might add, by Southern government officials. But these Southern Democrat governors, sheriffs, and police chiefs were not the only racists engaged in official segregation. One particular Northerner, himself a former president of an elite Ivy League institution and governor of New Jersey, President Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, a supposed champion promoting international peace and humanity through his envisioned League of Nations, directed the official segregation of the federal government and the United States military. Jim Crow segregation became official government policy of the South, and redlining and de facto segregation was the standard government practice in the North, and both had the same effect. Keep the black man from standing on his own. Well, in 1964, the Civil Rights Act, the government's answer to thwarting the stubborn racist practices still very much a staple of American life was the protected class. And the protected class meant as follows: readily identifiable groups with immutable characteristics that subjected members of the group to historical and widespread discrimination will be legally protected to make up for centuries of racial oppression. In other words, it was remedial in nature. It certainly makes sense. No other group had been as readily identifiable by their immutable characteristics, skin color, than Black Americans. And no other group in America had been so continuously subjected to the degree of historical atrocities as those endured by Black America, even despite the amended Constitution. So the rationale behind the designation of blacks needing to be protected was the recognition of the long-standing and severe damage done to blacks by not leaving them alone. And true enough, blacks made many gains as an identifiable and protected racial class, but groups that had not suffered the same degree of historical discrimination and hostility have arguably benefited much more. Minority Business Enterprise Programs, MBEs, were established to correct policies that crippled black business opportunity to compete for state and federal projects. But these programs also permit other ethnic or minority groups and women that don't have the same history of discrimination. Who has benefited from protected class status more? And the list of the protected classes has continued to expand and expand and expand, and now includes, among others, sexual orientation and gender preferences. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my belief that the protected class has been permanently hijacked by the social justice bandits with the purpose to compel acceptance of certain behaviors, choices, and lifestyles as a matter of constitutional right. So, what does that mean? For them, it means gay is the new black. Transgender is the new black. Illegal aliens is the new black. Same-sex couples are the new black. The strategy is attach it to black and they won't fight back. The protected class no longer emphasizes the immutable or unchangeable characteristics against the lingering effects of historical discrimination, but rather it's become the protection of preferring one choice over another as a matter of political favor. The protected class has lost its remedial purpose. And logically, you can't even have a protected class without having a corresponding unprotected class. And to me, that doesn't sound very equitable. Every time a new protected group is added to the preferred or special list, the other protected groups are less protected or special. So the thing about being special is this. If everyone is special, then no one is special. And if no one is special, why are we even bothered? Malcolm X, in response to a question on the progress being made in race relations, said this: I will never say that progress is being made. If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. The progress is healing the wound that the initial blow made. So to borrow from Malcolm's metaphor, I'll ask this question. How does America heal a 400-year-old festering wound? Well, perhaps the answer is we don't. Maybe at best, we're left with a permanent scar. And it's our job to determine how best we manage this scar. Are we going to try to hide it? Cover it up? Pretend it's not there? That's reminiscent of these efforts to tear down monuments and rename history and revision our past. We can be angry, full of hatred and bitterness, looking for someone to blame. Look what they did to us. Or we can embrace our scars as a part of who we are and move forward in the spirit of forgiveness as we would want to be forgiven. Our scars don't have to define us.
That's true.
And I do believe that forgiveness is the key to racial harmony, without a doubt. We heard it yesterday from Dr. Bodie talking about sin and redemption. It's the same thing. The power to release is absolutely amazing. Years ago, I had the misfortune of having someone I thought betrayed me. And I went for 10 years not talking to this person. And what I found was the burden of carrying that hatred was killing me. And one day I saw the fellow in the grocery store and something came over me and I thought, I'm going to call him over and I'm going to release him. So I brought him over and said, you know, what you did years ago was just awful. But I'm going to be a bigger man. I forgive you. I reached out and shook his hand. He rolled up, he teared up. But you know what? I was the one who was released. I had no idea the burden that I was carrying with this animosity. So I know for a fact, and I'm sure most of you do as well, that releasing through forgiveness is genuinely the right way, although it's tough. Now, we have a lot of folks out there today, and actually some local governments in California, across the country, that are actually looking at the blame game. They want to say, well, we still want to stir this whole racial thing up. We want to make sure that we get everybody riled. We want to hear about reparations. Will reparations fix America? And what are reparations? Payoffs today as compensation to certain qualifying blacks for treatment of previous generations and former slaves. Well, to now suggest that reparations for slavery will fix Black America 158 years after the Civil War defies logic. And it's incredible that there's actually people having conversations about it. But I actually calculated what it would take using a payoff figure of $100,000 per black person. Not that I think that $100,000 is a fair amount or even the right amount, as it seems to me almost anything is an insult. But just for calculation purposes, I figure if 45 million blacks with $100,000 each, that would be $4.5 trillion. But the real question is, what do you get? What happens after the payment has been made? Once I cash my check, am I paid off in full by Uncle Sam for all past atrocities from me and my family? Therefore, I can no longer complain about past practices. And what happens if tomorrow someone calls me a particular pejorative historically associated preparations based on everything that happens post-check cash. And much like the minority business programs, how long before other groups or minorities start asserting their claims of oppression? Would not including that diversity be the equitable thing to do? One final point that I'd like to make about political empowerment. Since the mid-1960s, most of Black America has shackled themselves politically to a Democrat Party that does not share their values and has historically not been very friendly. And yet Democrats have a cult-like dominance built on Black dependence on government.
Yes.
And the false narrative that the Republicans are nothing but a bunch of white supremacists.
True.
As a consequence, one party takes Blacks for granted, and the other party largely ignores them. Black voters have come to equate big government with better for Blacks. And that perception benefits the social justice crowd as they're all about pumping up the size of government. But it's proven disastrous for Black America. Black political independence is a certain key to the future of Black America and the future of America. Black political independence not tied to a particular party platform, but rather to a value system most beneficial to Black empowerment through faith, through family, and through economic opportunity, would force both parties to adjust their relationship and platform to more fully consider the interests and objectives of Black America. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
In the letter from the Holy Spirit, Dr. King spoke about our moral duty to obey just laws and our responsibility to disobey unjust laws when he said, one may well ask, how can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? The answer lies in the fact that there are two types of laws, just and unjust. I would be the first to advocate obeying just laws. One is not only a legal but a moral responsibility to obey just laws. Conversely, one has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws. I would agree with St. Augustine that an unjust law is no law at all. Welcome to the second of our rise principles. The I stands for individual liberty and fidelity. Again, the Bible tells us in both Romans 13 and 1 Peter 2 that we should be law-abiding citizens. However, in 1 Peter 2:16, it also tells us that we are to live as free men, but do not use your freedom as a cover-up for evil. Live as servants of God. Hence, we have a certain amount of liberty, but that liberty is kept in check by our fidelity to our God and His law above all others. In Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 21, the 10th commandment states that we not covet or desire our neighbor's wife or any of their possessions. The 10th commandment is actually the one law that governs the other 9. From the commandments to have no other gods before Him, to not murdering or committing adultery or even stealing. We are encouraged to provide for ourselves and not to scheme or misappropriate what belongs to others. John Adams noted, our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. Therefore, individual liberty and fidelity requires that laws restrict the free exercise of liberty and property. Consequently, no law should be passed unless there is a compelling reason to do so. The proponents of any bill should have the burden of proof that passage is necessary. Laws will reflect the morals of our society, but also encourage and promote individual character. Dr. King's dream was that we be judged by the content of our character and not by the color of our skin. It was a nod towards the view of people as individuals and a break from the skewed collectivistic thinking characteristic of liberal thought. Therefore, individuals should never be seen as only members or appendages of a larger group. Rather, we are each individuals with rights as such. These rights include, but are not limited to, those rights guaranteed in the Bill of Rights of the United States Constitution. They should also include those God-given rights of freedom, not specified in any written document, which necessarily exists in a nation where the individual is more important than the state. Conversely, these rights should not negate the responsibility of individuals' obligation to conduct him or herself as a responsible and productive member of society. However, the state is only responsible to protect your rights from being infringed, not to provide them. The right to bear arms or to have health care does not mean the government is obligated to acquire them on your behalf. No civilization can succeed and thrive for any duration unless free people act with fidelity to a core set of values and principles. Each of us must be accountable for our actions and to endeavor to build a better society to improve both our own lives and the lives of others. All citizens are entitled to the security of self and property. Government's primary task is the maintaining of law and order. To ensure these rights are protected, accordingly, the system of justice must afford all people access to competent representation, as well as a level playing field to ensure the imperatives of justice can be met. Dr. King once explained the difference between a just law and an unjust law. Now, what is the difference between the two? How does one determine whether a law is just or unjust? The just law is man-made code that squares with the moral law or the law of God. An unjust law is a code that is out of harmony with the moral law. To put it in the terms of St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal law and natural law. Individual liberty and fidelity reflects the sanctity and the dignity of all human life, while calling out each individual to live with discipline and purpose.
Good morning, everyone. Am I on?
Yeah, there we go. Good morning, everyone. I am Charles Love, and I am going to be moderating the panel on education. And I know education is important. We talked a lot about it, and probably a little more so today, because it's kind of the foundation to solving our problems and what a lot of the problems are. So I'm just going to guide the conversation. I brought some professionals here to do the heavy lifting, and I guess I'm tasked to introduce them. I'll be brief so we have more time to talk about the issue. On the end here, we have Latasha Fields. She ran as a candidate in the state for lieutenant governor, but also, more importantly for here, I see somebody say, yes, we know her, runs a homeschooling network. And Miles Mendoza from Oak Rose Group, you may not know him, but he's really important because if you know the school choice win, they helped you about that we got here in Illinois that's being challenged again. He was integral in making that happen. And to my immediate left, Jason Hill, distinguished professor at DePaul University. Let's give them a round of applause. So this panel is kind of called School Choice, but it's going to be broadly the importance of quality education and what's lacking and what is needed. And I want to start off by saying I'm in full support of school choice, with a caveat that we'll get to later. But I want to start with Latasha because Latasha, since COVID, when schools went virtual, and parents started to see what was being taught, we've seen an uptick in homeschooling. But you're kind of like the OG of homeschooling. You homeschooled your daughter who's graduated college. Homeschooling all the time, but I'm thinking at least 3 or 4 years ago, right?
Yes.
So you've been homeschooling for a long time. So what made you decide that was the right choice for you at the beginning?
Yeah, thank you, Charles. And I'm just honored to be here. God bless all of you. Amen.
Say hi to you.
Amen. So, yeah, my husband and I, we've been homeschooling almost 17 years now. And so it's a tremendous blessing. Our story is different in terms of why we chose to homeschool. And some of it may have this testimony, but the Lord called us to homeschool. We're originally from Louisiana. We've been in the great state of Illinois. Amen. For almost 12 years. Don't give it up to the Lord. And so, we pulled her out in the 4th grade. Just literally, God just impressed upon my heart. At that time, I didn't foresee any problem with the public school. Typical parent. My background is real estate business, so just typical situation. Nothing was going on. I was going to all the on-road programs, all that good stuff. And the Lord just dropped it in my heart like a ton of bricks. And I pulled her out, and He called us to pull her out, to make her a disciple of Jesus Christ. Amen. Come on. Amen. That's what all about. That's what about. He impressed upon us, Deuteronomy 6, that we have to diligently teach our children. Now, at that time, I had no idea, many of us did. Almost 17 years ago, the things that we're seeing happening now in our education system is beyond us. It's unconscionable, the things that we're seeing now. So that was our journey. And so from that time, I mean, immediately, I became a strong advocate for real Christian education. Amen. And then after her first year being homeschooled, the Lord impressed upon us to open up an evangelistic school of ministry so that we can help other children. And so now for a little over 15 years, we've been homeschooling other people's children, again, to help our families. And so right now here in Chicago, we have kids in the basement. Amen. So I have a lot of babies. They call me Mother Goose sometimes. So I'm just honored and blessed by God for that.
And Miles, so you are more recent, so you started this fight in the thick, well, 20 was a whole different set of madness. But even, 16, 17, when you started to see this, what did you see that was happening in schools that made it impress upon you that they needed to be some alternatives for them?
Sure. So first, thanks for having me. I'm very honored to be here and grateful for everything you're doing, bring everybody together. I started off as a social worker. I have an MSW. I worked at the Children's Hospital, and a lot of what got me started was the disparity between the have and have-nots. The kids that had means, they were being served when the summer hit. Kids I loved dearly, they went out to the street and they died. And they didn't have the same kind of resources that the upper income kids had. So I set it upon myself to become a fundraiser, was able to raise pretty significant amounts of dollars. I went from the Children's Hospital to raising somewhere near $62 million to support scholarships. Worked with, at that time, Governor Hickenlooper and Superintendent Michael Bennett. They were both Democrats. They ultimately became U.S. Senators. That led me into a group called Democrats for Education Reform. And I looked around the country and tried to find those little unicorns that were hanging around, advancing policies that supported kids to get a better education. Long story short, I kind of crossed the Rubicon within the Democratic Party and decided that private school choice was very important to advocate for. And a lot of that was just looking at the numbers and what was happening in Chicago. Just take one statistic, which is just appalling. When you look at 18 to 24-year-olds in the city of Chicago, 45% are out of work and out of school, African American. After COVID, that number is supposed to go up to around 70%.
Wow.
So our public schools are just absolutely failing. Through the tax credit scholarship law that I was able to help lead and pass in 2017, we now have been able to raise around $300 million. About 25,000 kids have access to attend 430 private schools. And the outcomes are significantly different. And now, in May, our governor, our legislature, want to take that away. So that is why I'm in the fight, because I believe that we can make a significant difference on the level of attainment that students can get, and the kind of employment opportunities they can get, the ability to maintain a family and give back to society.
That's right. And before I move on, I want to say something important to what you just said and made me think about it, is there's a lot that needs to be done, and he gave some impressive numbers. I mean, you had to make those numbers even from a dollar standpoint, and the people he met with, the politicians, were impressive. Most of you, I'm assuming about Miles, have no idea who he is. So my point is, there's things you all can do, and there's things that people out there around working, and it's not just the people that you see speaking on the TV, listen to radio. There are doers out there getting things done. We need to find out what they're doing and find ways to help them. I think that's important to say. But earlier I said a caveat, and I know that, because I want people to have as much information, because we talk about solutions. I mean, the thing is how to fix it. So you need to know, unfortunately, I'm kind of the dour guy, and since guys have to point out how bad it is. It's kind of why I brought the invitation over here. Because school choice is important, and there's two things that I think we need to be mindful of, not to change the importance of it. And one of them, I'll start with, is the fact that when you have private school choice, you get an option to homeschool, to go to these schools, to all these Catholic schools, these affluent, very successful private schools. And before, we thought that they would be the ticket out, right? They're feeders to Ivy League schools. The academics are supposed to be excellent, but as we've seen since 2020, that's not always the case. So I wanted to ask Jason, he's been a professor for years, what he sees coming, because a lot of the students he's at a private school, highly regarded private school, and a lot of these kids come in from these schools. He and I spoke at an event in Boston, and I'm sure you've all heard of Moms for Liberty. It's basically Moms for Liberty, it's called Parents Unite, great organization. It's like Moms for Liberty, but strictly for private school parents. So hearing those stories from them, that they are dealing with the same things that the other schools just downstream. So maybe not the academics are better, but those are even, the quality is going down because of the equity push, right? So they need to lower standards, right? They're taking away all the testing and those things. So I want Jason, if you would, to talk about, what you see now, the problems, and how the kids are coming in, and how it may have differed when you first started teaching.
Right. Well, thanks, Giles, and thank you all for having me. It's an honor to be here. So I've been an academic philosopher and professor for 27 years, and what I see happening, there are two phenomena that are happening in the university system. Students are coming in, and regardless of whether they have been the recipients of a public education or the recipients of a charter school or private education, I find that there's one phenomenon that is inescapable. They have been morally outsourced by their parents. I hate to say this, but when I hear my students say crazy things like the Constitution should be abolished, which by various nonpartisan or reports that come out of the Brookings Institute, you see that 70% of college students think that the Constitution should be rewritten or abolished, that free speech should be overturned, First Amendment should be overturned. And I say, where do you get these ideas from? Without any exception, they say, from my high school teachers. And this does not vary whether it's for the charter schools. So these idea pathogens are suffusing both the charter schools and the public school systems. None of them say from my parents. So after 27 years, I've concluded that a lot of parents are not the primary socializers of their children. They're not the primary conferrer of value on their children. They have morally outsourced their children to the school systems. And until we really address this problem, I think whether you send your child to a charter school or a parochial school, unless you are really vetting that school and ask yourself the fundamental question, am I the primary conferrer of a value system?
Yes, yes.
Comprehensive, wholesale value system, not a retailer in the realm of values, but a wholesaler. Am I a piecemeal value maker in my child's life? We're going to run into the same kind of conundrums. And then the last thing I want to say in this room is that there are two strands of students coming in. They are the satanic, demonic, systemic nihilists who want to destroy values and beauty and form because they are beautiful. It's like children who go around on a beach, kicking down beautifully constructed sandcastles that other children have created. So they're the demonic, satanic, systemic nihilists. And then you have, on the other hand, the strategic destroyers who want to bring into creation a radical left-wing Marxist socialist country. And the two work hand in hand because the nihilists have to destroy history, they have to destroy all the institutions that we have created in this country. And then after they have brought about a massive erasure, then you have the systemic socialists and Marxists who are hell-bent on recreating the DNA of the United States of America and destroying our republic as we know it.
I told you it was bad. I mean, we have to work to fix it, but this is important because as important as school choice is, and a lot, in the homeschooling case, you can control I moved to New York recently, and when I was here, my son was starting school, and I saw this stuff coming, so I was fighting about this years before. So when I picked the school, I went to a Christian school, not only, but it was Sacred Heart. And the reason I picked the school was because after kindergarten, the girls and the boys go to class, right? They can eat lunch together and things like that, too, separate. And they were strictly about, we're going to stick to our values. I had a meeting with the headmaster at the school. I'm sure they probably changed that title. And so all the parents came in, and it's just like any other weak school. It's a great school, so everybody wants to be. So there's atheists, there's Muslims, all these things. And one of the things I liked about it, they said, so what do we do? We like the school, it's beautiful, we like the academics, but what do we do? You have mass on Wednesdays, and I'm a Muslim, I'm an atheist, so what do we do? And the headmaster was, I appreciate your values and your religion, but your kids going to mass. That's what we do. Or you go to a different school, right? So that was there, but that was pre the summer of love. I haven't looked in to see if they're still doing it, but I see other schools like FXW who created a Christian school, elite private school, that created a separate track. So you don't have to go, they separated themselves from the Catholic program, right? So you're seeing those kind of things, and he talks in far better poetic terms than me. But I will say the culture today is like this toxic vat, right? And we're dumping it into the drinking flow, and the river's going down. So wherever you are, people are drinking from it, right? So you can't avoid it by going to some different places, schools everywhere, either. But the second piece, my second pushback is, or caveat, not pushback. But there's only a finite percentage of people. Now, my housework is great because it's helping people create more schools and more opportunities. But if the numbers are somewhere around 6% now, let's say we get up to 20, let's say we really win, we knock it out, blow the doors up and get up to 25%. 75% of the kids in America are still going to be in the public school system. Now, I live in New York now. Anybody know how many kids are in public school in New York? 1 million. Right? So that 75% will probably still be more than the next 15 cities. So, that 20% is important, and we need to grow at that 25%. But we can't write out the other kids, one, academically, but also when they come out and they've been taught all of the gender, all of the race, all of this stuff, and they can't read and write at grade level, right? They still, we go into the same culture. They still are going to run for office. They're going to be your prosecutors. They're still going to run Hollywood. They're going to be in the media. So you can't avoid them. So, Miles, you're doing the work. What do we do to the 75% that don't get it? Well, maybe only 70% because you're opening so many schools. You're opening so many people. What do we do with the rest of the kids?
So I have one solution, and it's parent empowerment. When you have the power to exit, you have power to change the public schools, not just the ability to enter into private schools. Without the power of exit, I don't see much potential. Jason's remarks scare me. It's hard to sit next to Jason. He's very eloquent and powerful. But this last week, I was informed a parent came to me, and they were extremely upset what had happened to their daughter because the social worker was able to have 90 minutes of therapy without any kind of parental permission. She'd gone through getting an attorney and trying to sue. That law has been changed this week, so you now can have 12 weeks of 1-hour therapy without parental permission.
Wow.
What can you do about it? Nothing. You have to send your kid to a public school, and you do not have choice. You can't leave that district, and you don't have a private school option if you can't afford to get out. Without the power of exit, you have no ability to push back. This is where the tax credit scholarship is what we have now. We have to build upon that. We have to protect that. We have to expand it.
How do you inoculate against the culture?
For me, homeschooling, right? I think homeschooling is the best fit for children with all this going on. And like for us in Chicago, we have I have again a private homeschool in our basement, but also we have a homeschool co-op. And so that's what we've been advocating, that people will step out. We call it bring them to your kitchen table. You could start with 5 students, 5 kids in your neighborhood, because what this is going to take is going to take community effort, right? And so we can birth these community co-op schools, pod schools, micro schools, again, the kitchen table idea to bring these kids out. So it's going to take diligent hard work, and what I like to piggyback on, this is not a new idea of creating our own schools. Let's take the Booker T. Washington example, right? Let's just pass that baton and keep this thing going, because that's what's going to ultimately save our children. And we're all saying, even with private schools, the academics may be good, but at the end of the day, where's their faith? So that's the thing that I believe, and I thank God that we're keeping on the forefront, that what has to happen is we have to make sure they are getting a biblical worldview. Because that's the most powerful thing that's going to shape, if it doesn't shape the country as a whole, it's going to shape our communities, it's going to shape our families. Because we've been hearing a lot of talk about the black man, how to fix black America, our society as a whole. And that's what we have to do, bring back those kingdom principles, those biblical principles. And that's one thing that I thank God that homeschooling does, because that's the way we don't have to worry about parental involvement opt-out. We don't have to worry about our children taught to the sexualization and all the things that's going on, especially in Illinois public schools, the whole LGBTQ plus alphabet movement that's going on, and teaching children as young as third grade that they can masturbate. These are the things that we have to wake up to, especially here in Illinois, and get our children out. Right? So we just got to open up community co-op schools.
Because I've been here and I know California, had each state has different rules and laws surrounding homeschooling. Is Illinois antagonistic to homeschooling?
Believe it or not, Illinois is one of the best states to homeschool. Come on, give it up for Illinois. As corrupt as the internal government, it is. We virtually have no laws. It is very flexible, very liberal here. With homeschooling, there's no reporting. Because again, I'm from Louisiana, and in Louisiana, we have to report every year annually. But here in Illinois, it's voluntary. You don't have to do that.
We're getting short on time here, Jason. Let's talk solutions. We're talking about fixing. So I think I would assume most people agree it's all of the above, right? So school choice is important. Parental involvement. People here need to go out and talk to their friends and family, because I find, I don't know if you do or you can speak to, that when I talk about these things to my friends and family, it's not really political. It's like, what do you think about the gender issue of the day, or Baltimore, nobody's breathing great home. They don't know it. People forget about the majority of people who are living their lives while we're engaged, so we're listening to talk radio, we're watching, left-wing, right-wing media. They're not, right? Maybe local, not maybe local news, and that's it. So I talk to my friends, they have no idea at all. They didn't know what was happening, they had never heard of it, they're shocked. So part of it, in addition to those things, that is somehow we have to find a way to communicate it to the masses, but we're not all in one place anymore, so it's hard. So what do you think about that? Moving forward, things we can do.
Well, I think your parents have to start thinking very, very comprehensively and not just episodically. So start thinking also on the fiscal level. Start voting into power those officials who are going to start abolishing something like the state tax, like the state income tax, right? Start thinking about politicians who are going to abolish that part of your income that you would use to choose to send your child to a well-vetted private school. Start thinking about abolishing one of the most evil phenomena in the world, which is in the country, which is the teachers' union. That the teachers' union are not working on behalf of their children, they're working on behalf of their own. You can't even call it rational self-interest. They're just working on behalf of their own careerism. Start thinking about ways to question the tenure system that is running amok both in higher education, but in this case in the K-12 system, where the tenure system inoculates rotten bad behavior of teachers who are not doing their jobs properly and are not held accountable, and where something like diversity in the DEI equation simply abolishes excellence. And getting back to Natasha's question, I think homeschooling is a good idea, and also vote into politicians, into office. Those politicians who would not tax in a two-family income scenario, who would not tax that income of the spouse who's working, whose other spouse that you have to really vet these charter schools and these private schools because they are becoming as woke as the public schools. Idea pathogens are suffusing these charter schools at an unprecedented rate, and parents themselves in some of these charter schools, here's our problem, who are infected. It's not just the administrative bodies, it's not just the teachers, it's some of the parents in these charter schools. I see it as a professor. Some of these parents are as woke as can be and are the biggest infectants of the education system in some of these private schools.
Well, there's one thing you used to say, and I remember I was laughing, Mr. Nate, I told since you understand what else. One of the things you said people need to do is stop giving money to the alma mater.
Well, yeah, in several of my books I've written about defunding completely, getting rid of public funded education has got to be gotten rid of, and stop funding public schools, stop funding. I call for the complete defunding of the universities, first of all, and defunding the social sciences and the humanities, which are incubation centers for socialist ideas, and our universities have become cults. So when your children graduate from the K-12 system, they're not being delivered into a system that historically has been tasked with the job of preparing your child to be our sovereign, autonomous agent that can navigate the world. What your child is being delivered into is an indoctrination center, a Marxist-led indoctrination center that is preparing that child to become socialist, a foot soldier, atheistic socialist, to change the DNA of America. So I call for the defunding of the social sciences and the humanities, the professoriate, the administrative bodies who are the architects of these Marxist programs.
Last word.
15. Can you guys hear me?
They want us to go, they cut off your mic.
So 15. When I helped to pass the tax credit scholarship, legislators would freak out and say, "My phone has been blowing up." Why? 15 parents called. 15 is nothing. Like, call your legislator, get your voice. When you have the power, equity in my world of fundraising with people who deal with finance, equity means you own the money. That's what should happen in education.
Perfect way to end it. Thank you.
Powerful commentary, amen. And tremendous amount of information to arm us as an army that is pushing back as a real army. Okay, we're going to go to a break now, so we all have a quick 10-minute break before we convene. Amen. All right.
Like, but they were in the bathroom so well. Look up that book, Marijuana. $5. What? He was able to go and just grab it and see if he could. I wanted to.
They're already there. The hearings they've had the last couple of months. That's clear.
So now I'm really sad that I missed yesterday. This has been great. I just texted Steve. I'm like, this is great. No, it's good. Wonderful job. Yeah. Stay. Yeah. Come out to the heartland. No, this is great. It's a nice facility. Yeah, this is great. This is for everyone. Yeah. Yeah, this is great. Yeah. Doing a great job. Is he? No? I'm going to get a copy. I was sprung out on this. No problem. Go ahead. Oh, he had to use it.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I know well, there are a lot of talented but also because our son's take that.
He
All right, okay, if we can get everyone to get back to their seats. And so I'm going to call out the hall out there and tell them we're going to get underway as well. Appreciate that. That previous panel was tremendously informative as to what's happening in the education segment. It should give us a good indication as to the inroads that the, I'll just call them the anti-God crowd, has infiltrated our school systems, which were built upon Judeo-Christian ethic, just like the rest of the nation. And it's foundational to what made America successful in training up the next generation. Okay, my next guest, I'm going to introduce Mr. West and Mr. Nixon are going to come up. They're going to be talking about an area in schooling that I was not very good at, and that was science. Amen. So would you welcome these two gentlemen to the podium and to the panel, Mr. West and Mr. Nixon.
Okay, my name is John Best, and I'm Vice President of a place called Discovery Institute and Director of its Center for Science and Culture. I was previously a professor at Seattle Pacific University. Can you advance the slide? Discovery Institute is a conservative think tank headquartered in Seattle. Our mission is to advance a culture of purpose. So could you advance the slide, please? Our mission is to advance the purpose of culture, creativity, and innovation. We're probably best known on the economic side for work of George Gilder. Can you advance the slide, please? Who authored the classic book Wealth and Poverty that inspired many of the economic policies of the Reagan administration. Advance the slide. In the pro-life area, our senior fellow Wesley J. Smith is known for his work on issues like patient rights, euthanasia, and bioethics. Please advance the slide. We're also one of the few conservative think tanks that actually has a program on how to address homelessness, which features journalist Jonathan Cho, writer Martin Lasky, and Robert Marvick, who had served as the executive director of the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. Saying all this, Discovery is probably most notorious for its Center for Science and Culture, a hub of scientists and philosophers and theologians and others like Michael Behe and Stephen Meyer, who argue that nature provides clear and convincing evidence of purpose in intelligent design. We're not just the products of a blind and purposeless process. So our topic for this session is how misguided views of science are helping to fuel our cultural breakdown in both the black community and the white community, basically all of our communities, how this is impacted. My co-panelist is Sean Mixon. Sean is an adjunct professor of philosophy at Dallas College in Texas, and he runs a YouTube channel named Thought Decoder. He has a master's in philosophy from the University of Texas at Arlington, and I'm proud to say he was a C.S. Lewis Fellow at Discovery Institute last year. I'm going to speak first, and Sean will also be speaking, and then Sean and my colleague Steve Dilley will also be speaking at a breakout session. So if I don't put you to sleep, Sean definitely won't. But if you get intrigued, then maybe you might go to that breakout session too. So let's get started. Next slide. Joseph Graves is a fellow of the Council of the American Association for the Advancement of Science, one of America's premier scientific organizations. He's also a professor of biological sciences at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University. Graves describes himself as the first African American to receive a PhD in evolutionary biology. In a book published last year, Dr. Graves tells how he was raised by devout Christian parents and how he originally identified with the cultural views of most Americans at the time. In middle school, for example, he says he still thought John Wayne was the good guy in his movies. But then, as a young man, he became radicalized by reading two works. Next slide. The first was the Communist Manifesto by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. It introduced Graves to the class struggle and led him to embrace socialism. Next slide. The second work was On the Origin of Species by Charles Darwin. According to Graves, reading Darwin raised monumental theological questions in my mind concerning the nature of God, which resulted in him becoming, in his words, militantly atheistic. Graves doesn't regard his experience as exceptional. As he says, I'm a member of the community of professional evolutionary biologists, most of whom are atheists. Unlike many of his colleagues, Graves eventually found a road back to faith, but it wasn't the faith post-Darwin and Marx of his parents. It was a progressive ideology that viewed the Bible as largely erroneous, fallible, evolving document that rejected historic Christian teachings about sex and gender and other matters, and even associated pro-lifers with, quote, Klansmen and neo-Nazis, unquote. I'm starting with Joseph Graves because I think his story reveals some important truths. First, many people think that debates about science, especially debates over Darwin, don't really matter. They're ivory tower disputes, not real-world consequences. But if you understand the worldview that Darwin promoted, you'll soon realize just that a wrong conception of science can have catastrophic cultural consequences. Another truth is that the hijacking of science to promote atheism and to attack sort of the Judeo-Christian worldview impacts all of us regardless of our race. Churches and faith are still a lot more central for most of the black community than in America than for many hyper-secularized whites. But the same misguided conceptions of science that have twisted the worldview of many leading whites in our culture are now also impacting the worldview of leading blacks after they go through academia. And it's not just Joseph Graves. Please advance the slide. Consider America's probably leading science in popular culture. Physicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. Tyson is another one. He attended Catholic schools as a boy, but he soon became an avowed agnostic. He now asserts that there, quote, is no common ground between science and religion, and he lauds Darwin as the greatest spiritual teacher in the last 1,000 years, crediting him with debunking the biblical idea that humans are the kings of life, that we were created and charged with the management of life and earth. And he credits scientists and Darwin with debunking that idea. So how did we get here? As many historians of science will tell you, science actually started out rooted and arising from a biblical worldview. How did we get to a situation where science today is used often as a battering ram against faith and traditional morality in society? Well, Charles Darwin played a pivotal role, as actually voting talked about yesterday. Darwin basically championed several ideas that transformed both science and culture. And I'm just going to quickly run off form. First, Darwin, yeah, you can forward it to Darwin, and then forward it actually again. Okay. First, Darwin argued that according to science, nature is the product of a blind and unguided process. And of course, nature includes us, these advances went. In the words of Harvard paleontologist George Gaylord Simpson, man is the result of a purposeless process that did not have him in mind. This view does not logically necessitate atheism, but it certainly encourages it. Think about it. If nature really supplies proof that the history of life is a product of a blind and unguided process, then that would certainly seem to make an atheist worldview much more credible. And I think that's why so many scientists have made unguided Darwinian evolution a cornerstone in their case for atheism. And not just scientists. Please forward the slide. In a survey of American atheists and agnostics, nearly 7 in 10 atheists in America and more than 4 in 10 agnostics say that Darwin's unguided mutation natural selection mechanism, and again, says that history of life is unguided, has made the existence of God less likely for them personally. Not just for other people, but for me personally, it makes it less likely that God exists. Much of the intellectual foundations for the modern rejection of God in academia and in wider culture actually derives in large part from the claims made by Darwin. Okay, Darwin's second big idea is that reshaped science and culture is the claim that humans are just another animal. We aren't fundamentally unique. We're not special. As Darwin himself wrote in one of his notebooks, it's absurd to talk about one animal being higher than another. This Darwinian idea that humans are merely animals has fueled some of the most vicious efforts to devalue human life over the past century. To be really specific, and actually Bodhi alluded to this yesterday, because Darwinists thought that humans arose from lower animals, they obsessed with discovering which human groups were closest to the ape-like creatures from which we arose. Please forward. Darwin himself was clear. In his book, The Descent of Man, he claimed blacks were the humans closest to apes. He also asserted there were significant differences in the mental faculties of men of distinct races. Forward. More generally, as my friend, the late Nigerian scholar Olufemi Olunai pointed out in a book that was just published, Darwin's writings clearly demonstrate that by barbarous, inferior, or lower peoples, he usually meant dark-skinned people. The term highly civilized or superior he applied to Caucasians. Now, I want to be clear, Darwin was not the world's first racist, but he did offer scientists a seemingly powerful biological rationalization for racial inferiority. According to Darwin and his supporters, we should expect races to have fundamentally unequal capacities because why? Well, natural selection acting on different populations will evolve different traits for those populations based on their survival needs. We as humans don't reflect a plan of, say, God, who planned all of us, created us in his image. We reflect the accidents of history of natural selection in our particular environment. So you should expect radical inequality, according to Darwin. For the slide. Today, the Darwinian idea that humans aren't special, we're just another animal on the face of the planet, fuels the agenda of many really radical environmentalists who argue that we have no basis for prioritizing the good of humanity over the needs of any other creature on the earth, whether they be insects, rodents, or weeds. Okay, the third big idea fueled by Darwin's theory was a supposedly scientific justification for moral relativism. According to Darwin, moral precepts develop because of certain environmental conditions under them they promote physical survival. Once those conditions for survival change, however, so too do the dictates of morality. So what's moral evolves just like everything else. Nowhere has this Darwinian idea of morality had a more pronounced impact than family life. It is no accident that the thinker most responsible for the breakdown of traditional sexual ethics in Western culture was a Harvard-trained evolutionary zoologist. Forwarded. His name, Alfred Kinsey. Most people don't know that he was trained as an evolutionary zoologist. Adopting a third Darwinian approach to sexual morality, Kinsey argued that any sexual practice that could be found somewhere among mammals could be regarded, quote, as normal mammalian behavior, unquote, and therefore it was unobjectionable. And he really didn't need any practice. We don't need to go into that here. The fourth and final big idea fueled by Darwin's theory was perhaps the worst. It was the idea that the engine of progress in the history of life is mass death. Instead of believing that our remarkable creatures of living things reflect the intelligent design of a master artist. Darwin portrayed death and destruction as our ultimate creator, as he wrote at the end of his most famous work, Please Forward. Thus, from the war of nature, from famine, from death, the most exalted object which we are capable of conceiving, namely, the production of the higher animals, directly follows. Just think of that mentality of making mass death our creator. Not God, not the God who loves us, who creates us in his image, but mass death. This survival of the fittest mentality was explicitly embraced as a rationale for genocide, not only in World War II, but before World War I, when, please forward, Germans in Southwest Africa, modern Namibia, engaged in one of the first racial genocides of the 20th century against the Herero people. Something that most people don't actually know about. They know about what the Germans did against the Jews. They don't know about the social Darwinian, the racial genocide that they perpetrated in Southwest Africa. In America, meanwhile, the Darwinian idea that death leads to progress was prominent in both the Please Forward, the eugenics movement, and more recently, Please Forward, in the promotion of abortion on demand. The Darwinian arguments were fairly key in some of the arguments for the legalization of abortion in the 1960s and 70s, and up through the current time. Now, the good news is that in recent decades, science itself has increasingly undermined the Darwinian view of reality. Please forward. When a very famous, prominent atheist philosopher like Thomas Nagel at New York University can publish a book with Oxford University Press with the subtitle, Why the Materialist Neo-Darwinian Conception of Nature is Almost Certainly False. And when 3 Nobel Prize-winning scientists can endorse, please forward, this book by Brazilian scientist Marcos Everlin, please forward, as they did, it should be clear that something is afoot. But one thing is clear, I say, if we want to save our culture, we need to be equipped to address false claims made in the name of science head on. Because your kids, when they get not only to the public schools, to high school, when they get to college, that's what they're going to be told as to why what they learned, as Joseph Graves did. You know, he learned at home from Bible-believing Christian parents, but then he read Marx and then he read Darwin, and that flipped him. Now, I know I'm making a lot of sweeping claims here. If you want documentation, I encourage you, you can read my book, Darwin Day in America, or for free, you can get a sort of distillation of these key ideas with a lot of documentation. Go to next. In a thing called Darwin's 3 Big Ideas, you just go to discovery.org/big ideas, or go use the QR code and just get it downloaded for free. And if you'd like to find out more, again, I encourage you to think about maybe attending the future session. And now I'm going to hand things over to Sean.
Thank you, Dr. Willis. How's everyone doing this morning? Okay? All right, that's great. Dr. Willis is a brilliant presenter and historian, and you always learn a lot when you listen to him speak. Today I'll be talking about scientism, and if I sound country or I'm from the South, I am. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and something weird happened to me. My brother, he always asks me, he says, "Sean, where are you from? You sound so country." And I taught public school for 9 years and in Dallas, Texas, and every year the students would ask me, "Mr. Nixon, where are you from?" And I was like, "Okay, I know where this is going." Because I sound country, right? "Yeah, you sound like you're from like Alabama or Mississippi," so I get it. And it makes me a little self-conscious, but I'll try to plow through this talk. So I say, so if you have a counter, I want you to count how many times I say, and I'll be with you after this presentation. So we're talking.
Yes, there you go.
Scientism. What is it and why it matters? That's my name and that's my YouTube channel. All right, next. Just a little bit about me. I'm a professor of philosophy at Dallas College. I've taught public school for 9 years. I've taught 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 graders. I'm the first recipient of the Albert Schweitzer Fellowship I'm the first black graduate with a Master of Philosophy from the University of Dallas. I should put my C.S. Lewis graduate from the Discovery Institute. And I'm also the director of Reasonable Fate Dallas chapter, an organization founded by Dr. William Lane Craig. I have a mission. As I began to study philosophy, it was the first time that I took a class in critical thinking. And later on, I took a class in logic, which is the science of argumentation. And as I studied critical thinking and I studied logic, I found that this was a tool that I needed my entire life. And I began to wonder, why don't they teach everyone logic? Why aren't all students required to take critical thinking classes? Critical thinking and logic, they give you the ability to not just accept claims, to accept narratives that you hear, but it gives you the ability to critique and evaluate arguments, reasons that people give for their beliefs. So with my YouTube channel, I've dedicated my channel to exposing people of color and everyone else to critical thinking skills, to conversations about Christianity and philosophy. This is William Lane Craig on the front. I recently did a video, and that video went viral, and I'm going to show you that video today. Too many people have saw the thumbnail, and over 180,000 people have watched the video. Next, please. So just to start out, we're going to talk about a philosophy. I'm going to give you the big picture of philosophy, if this is what you would get in the intro class. So what are the branches of philosophy? Next. Philosophy has metaphysics. It involves the study of reality and being. What types of things exist? Does everything have a sound and a touch? Can you touch it? Can you see it? And can you taste it and smell it? Or are there things that you can't touch, taste, see, and smell, and use your five senses to access? So philosophy studies that. The view that there are only material objects that exist, that's called materialism. And a lot of scientists, they have philosophical worldviews called materialism. And this is why a lot of times they reject the existence of God. Okay, go next. Epistemology, that's the study of knowledge. What is knowledge? Do I know something just because I think it's true? What if I was a kid and I just came up and I said, you know, I think the sky is blue, and I had never saw the sky. Would I know that the sky was blue, or do I need some type of justification or evidence to go along with my belief? And is that knowledge? Right, so epistemology studies the theory of knowledge. Ethics. Ethics is the study of morality. We're all familiar with this term, ethics. We use that term a lot in pop culture. Okay, next. So scientism is basically a theory of knowledge about what we can know and how we know it. So I want to play this short clip. This is a dialogue between William Lane Craig and Peter Atkins. And I want you to listen to what Peter Atkins, the scientist, believes that science can accomplish and science can demonstrate. I had to unmute my laptop. It's like L2. On the actual laptop, L2. Okay. All right, well, so what happened in this exchange is, can you play it? I can just grab what's okay.
That there is no such being. Okay, but we can't prove that there is no God. I mean, it's not a matter of what is it. It's not a mathematical proof. You cannot possibly give a mathematical proof. Okay, here's an any kind of argument. Everything that religion claims a God can do can be accounted for by science. So that's, if you like, the one branch of the argument. So that there's no need, there's no necessity for a God, because science can account for everything. On the other side of the argument is the reasons why people do believe in God. One can understand why people believe in God. It's a sense of being alone. It's a sense of bewilderment. It's a sense of wishing for power over other people. It's the worst of the reasons. It's simply a sense of bewilderment. It's a sense of being alone. And you don't know these feelings far better than I, because you obviously believe in that. But there's taken together with a reason why people believe, desperate to believe, together with the fact that you don't need actually a God, in a sense amounts to an argument against the existence of God.
Well, I guess I don't see that. I mean, why doesn't that commit the genetic fallacy of trying to say that by explaining how a belief originates, you thereby show the belief to be false? Even if it were true that belief in the existence of God were the product of fear and anxiety and so forth, which I don't for a minute admit, but even if it were, that's simply a genetic fallacy to say that because that's the way the belief originates, but therefore the belief is false.
But that's only one half of the argument. I'm not saying that that alone is adequate, and I'm not saying that the fact that science can account for everything in alone is also adequate. But taken together, the fact that science is omnipotent, and the fact that I can understand why people like you desperately want to believe in God, that is an argument against it.
But two fallacious arguments put together don't make a sound argument, right?
Yeah, but two legs are support.
Yes, but the legs have to be sound. I mean,
I'm arguing that the sufficiency and the necessity.
The first argument only, it granted, which I don't grant the premises, but the first argument will prove that it's not necessary to believe in God in order to explain certain things. That doesn't prove God doesn't exist. The second argument commits a genetic fallacy. It's saying that because you can explain how people come to believe in God, therefore God doesn't exist. Neither of those warrant the conclusion, therefore God doesn't exist.
I did not say that it was going to be a mathematical proof.
No, but
it is valid in the sense that there is no need for a God. And everything in the world can be understood without needing to invoke a God. You have to accept that that is one possible view to take about the world.
Sure, it's possible,
but you deny that science cannot account for everything.
Yes, I do deny that science.
So what can't it account for?
Well, having brought that up in the debate, I have a number of examples that I was going to give. I think there are a good number of things that cannot be scientifically proven, but that we're all rational to accept. Let me list 5. Logical and mathematical truths cannot be proven by science. Science presupposes logic and math, so that to try to prove them by science would be arguing in a circle. Metaphysical truths, like there are other minds other than my own, or that the external world is real, or that the past was not created 5 minutes ago with an appearance of age, are rational beliefs that cannot be scientifically proven. Ethical beliefs about statements of value are not accessible by the scientific method. You can't show by science whether the Nazi scientists in the camps did anything evil as opposed to the scientists in Western democracies. Aesthetic judgments, number 4, cannot be accessed by the scientific method because the beautiful like the good cannot be scientifically proven. And finally, most remarkably, would be science itself. Science cannot be justified by the scientific method. Science is permeated with unprovable assumptions. For example, in the special theory of relativity, the whole theory hinges on the assumption that the speed of light is constant in a one-way direction between any 2 points A and B, but that strictly cannot be proven. We simply have to assume that in order to uphold the theory.
Okay, so if we go back, so scientism, we don't have to play this. I'm just going to rip through this really fast. So scientism is a theory about how and what we know. Okay, if you listen to the video, the scientist said that science is omnipotent. Omnipotent means all powerful. If you're a Christian, then you know that that is generally considered one of the traits of God. But to the scientist, his God is science. So science becomes a pseudo-God, a pseudo-religion to the scientist. Go next. You just click next. So right here, this was Richard Dawkins on that previous slide. He's another famous atheist. And he said that science, the way you prove science is because it works. Okay, go next. There's two types of scientism. Go next. Strong and weak. Okay. Go next. Next. All right. Next. Strong scientism is thinking that a statement is only true if it can be demonstrated by science. Next. Go to the next slide. Okay. All right. But just to conclude, we believe that Jesus rose from the dead, right? And that's a unique event that happened over 2,000 years ago. That cannot be demonstrated scientifically through testing because it was a unique event. We also believe that God raised Jesus from the dead if you're a Christian, right? And so that is also something that cannot be demonstrated by science, since God is a spirit, right? God's not like a floating spaghetti monster that is a meatball that's flying through space that you can observe and you can taste. Thank you for that. If you want to see more of this, we're going to have a second seminar session this evening at 2:30. Hopefully you can come on out. Thank you.
Science. We all know as believers that science is best defined by understanding God's holy word, where you put the natural order of things together. Yet they flip these things around, haven't they? Thank God for John that just presented to state the truth. Scientific community. I remember being in school when they first started talking about evolution, and it was brought to the school as a theory. And now it's generally accepted. You can't turn on a television show or watch a nature show without them talking about evolution and so forth as a fact. But those of us who have the common sense to understand how we were put here and who put us here, I smile and grin and bear it most times. Sometimes I want to throw something at the TV. Amen. Okay, so as I get looking over my notes, someone is moving around. I'm just going to shoot from the hip here. Our next panelist and guest is, I just want to welcome the co-founder of the Freedom Institute. And this was Jennifer. Jennifer Wallace is going to come up and, along with some guests that she will be talking about families. Amen? Amen. All right. Let's play the video.
Focuses on the family. The S in RISE is for strong family values. From the beginning of creation, marriage and family have been an important institution established by God. In Genesis 1, verses 26 through 30, there is an emphasis on humanity created in the image and likeness of God to fulfill His divine plan and purposes. Our understanding of family also extends to Genesis chapter 2, verses 20 through 24, where the emphasis is on finding a helper, a companion suitable for Adam, an integral partnership intended to complete Adam, but also a reflection of the triune nature of God. Marriage and family are a sacred bond And Jesus tells us in Matthew 19:4-6, that the husband and wife become one flesh, and that what God has joined together should not be separated. The epistles elaborate on family dynamic, giving instructions for husbands, wives, and children found in 1 Peter 3, verses 1-7, Ephesians 3, 1-7, and Colossians 3, 18-19. Further warning for the parents and children are found in Colossians 3, 20-21, and Ephesians chapter 6, 1-4. As Paul encourages children to honor their parents, and parents not to frustrate their children, but to bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. Frederick Douglass understood the ramifications of unhealthy families and lack of values when he said, "It is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men." The Rice principle of strong family values echoes these sentiments. Strong family values includes our belief that marriage is intended to be a permanent relationship between one man and one woman, and is foundational for healthy and stable families. Marriage functions to satisfy the longings of the human heart, to give and to receive unconditional love, to welcome and to ensure the full physical and emotional development of children, and to reinforce and perpetuate the installation of moral values and principles. Strong family values must be preserved and impressed upon each generation. The natural family is the foundation of society. Therefore, the state should promote its formation while interfering in its function as little as possible. Family unity and interdependency are necessary to foster and encourage culture, learning, long-term national stability. Therefore, two-parent households should be encouraged and fatherhood honored as the means of diminishing the development of delinquency in children and young adults. Our earnest conviction is that many of the Black community's problems, as well as other communities, could be solved if we gave more attention to building strong and healthy families. We believe that to minimize confrontation with police, eliminate visits to abortion clinics, school dropouts and delinquency, incarcerations, as well as illicit use of drugs and drug suppliers, we must focus on combating the underlying problem, the dysfunction and disintegration of the Black family. Education starts at home and is the first classroom children have. The family thus serves as the center for social, educational, economic, and spiritual life to build strong bonds among generations and to pass on a way of life that has transcendent meaning. Since education begins at home, it should remain the prerogative of parents to choose where they send their children for further education. Human life is sacred and inviolable, from conception to natural death. Protection for the unborn and elderly and compassion for the sick and infirm are essential elements for a cultural life, as well as necessary for the health of citizens in a God-fearing society. The free exercise of religious faith is paramount to the health and the well-being of this free society. Government is prohibited in the establishment of any religion, but also banned from interfering in the practice thereof. Citizens therefore should be free to worship and practice their faith as they choose without fear of governmental interference, coercion, or manipulation. The church is the extension of the family and the instrument for the work of God to impact societal values. Duty, honor, self-sacrifice, love of neighbor, and country are some of those values. But equally important are the pursuit of justice and equality before the law. It is the church where the disenfranchised and the marginalized find redemption, restoration, forgiveness, and reconciliation before God and man. Let me take a moment to quote a few well-known people who agree with our assessment of the family. The only rock I know that stays steady, the only institution I know that works is the family. The Ayakoka. There is no doubt that it is around the family and the home that all the greatest virtues, the most dominating virtues of humans, are created, strengthened, and maintained. It's the church. The family is the natural and fundamental root unit of society. It is entitled to protection by society and the state. Eleanor Roosevelt. At the end of your life, you will never regret not having passed one more test, not winning one more verdict, not closing one more deal. You will regret time not spent with a husband, a friend, a child, or a parent. Ms. Barbara Bush. Of all the rocks upon which we build our lives, we are reminded today that family is the most important. And U.S. Senator Barack Obama. These strong family values are inevitably a reflection of the strength, courage, and the power of these people.
Good morning. Good morning. Most will agree that the Black American experience in general, and Black family life in particular, have been uniquely shaped and influenced by a combination of social political powers, ideologies, as well as violent psychosocial and spiritual factors throughout the history and ethos of the Western American society. The irony, however, although rarely acknowledged, includes the fact that these issues and challenges are particular of all humanity, specifically those outcomes from the unintended consequences in human sufferings deeply rooted in mankind's spiritual alienation and need for reconciliation and personal relationship with both the holy and just God and one with another, as well as the fact that it is impossible to consider the strength or health of any individual or group apart from considering all the factors which contribute to the health or disorder of its structure or function. In the wake of more than half a century of American social science and public policy research, the highly controversial 1965's The Negro Family, The Case for National Action continues to define the collaborative efforts of some to remedy what has commonly been described as the causes and consequences resulting from generations of prejudice and human intolerance characterized by racial discrimination and inequality. Furthermore, in this national call to action, I think it came back. Okay. Furthermore, in this national call to action, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, PhD, sociologist, and then Assistant Secretary for Public Policy and Research for the Department of U.S. Labor, argued that a tangle of pathologies ranging from escalating non-marital birth rates in female-headed households to the prevalence of absentee Black husbands and fathers were not only the leading contributors to the instability of the Black family, but were also the primary barriers for Blacks towards achieving healthy family function, as well as progress in attaining desired social and economic equalities. And while we're unable to fully explore here the historical context and specific research which chronicles the social and economic disparities and conclusions outlined in this report, the overall findings of the Moynihan report clearly illustrate the need for a more holistic, relational, ideographic view of healthy family functioning and processes, which not only address the complexities inherent in understanding the underlying social problems and dysfunctional conditions that have disproportionately characterized the Black family, but which also provide a biblically integrated structural model of marriage and family life that fosters the rebuilding and strengthening of the Black family. And so with that said, we had a little change to our panel, but in the brief time we have here, we are pleased to welcome our panel, who we've asked to frame the conversation from his or her unique perspective and area of expertise, including providing some historical context for both the enduring strengths as well as underlying problems and conditions contributing to the present instability of the Black family, and what each sees as some solutions to foster the achieving of healthy family functioning, in particular of a biblical model of marriage and family life. So, let's see. We have, we were to have Reverend Dean Nelson, the chairman of the Douglas Leadership Institute, but we do have his colleague Cindy this morning. They are authors of the Enduring Strength of the Black Family Report, and just wanting her to maybe chronicle the historical context for the strength of the Black family up until and including the rise and impact of social services, the social service industry, as well as its impact on the stability of the Black family as we've come to know. Thank you so very much. My name is Cindy Warner, and I'm a mom and a grandmom, and I serve as the state ambassador for the Frederick Douglass Foundation in Wisconsin. We have done a program on the enduring strength of the Black family, and if you go outside at our table, you'll be able to pick up a copy of it, or you can go directly to the Douglass Institute, Leadership Institute, to find out more information about it. Yeah, I was talking to Dean this morning when he asked me to come and speak. His topic was more geared towards strengthening the Black family by having more Black strong male roles. And this gentleman right here, Delano, will speak more on that, because as you can see, I identify and I am a woman. So I'm going to talk about my experience and how we had a strong family unit in my household. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And in growing up in the 60s and 70s, I grew up in the projects in Philadelphia. But one of the things that we always had was church. I grew up in a household with a single mom, 13 of us. Can you imagine that today? 13 of us running around. But one of the things my mom always instilled in us, that you must get up and you must go to church. And that kept us grounded. That kept us involved into our communities. And one of the things, I was talking to a young lady earlier today, and we talked about the fact that even if you have a two-family unit, if church is not Christ-centered, then it won't make a difference. So that's where I see our families growing and being strengthened, is by growing within the church. So I'm going to turn it over to this young man. Here we have with us Delano Squires. He's the research fellow for life, religion, and family at the Heritage Foundation. For the Heritage Foundation, whose work exposes the effect of liberal ideologies by asking what, as he has said, the Warner report and other liberal thought really reveals about the subversion of Black male responsibility and increasing antagonistic views of men, traditional family structure, along with some of the destructive consequences and unintended effects on the family.
Thank you for that. Thanks for the introduction. Again, my name is Delano Squires. As Jennifer said, I'm a research fellow at the Heritage Foundation. I'm also a contributor to The Blaze, so some of you may have seen some of my work. I appear on a podcast with Jason Goodlock called Fearless with Jason Goodlock. I write twice a week for The Blaze. I started writing publicly for a site called Black and Married with Kids. This was over a decade ago. And since then, I've written for Black Married Kids, The Root, The Griot, The Federalist, and The Blaze. So I tell people I'm probably the only person to be edited by both Joy Reid and Jason Goodlock. But I start with BMWK because this is an issue that's been burning inside of me for a long time. And the couple that started that website wanted to provide more positive images of Black families, marriage, child rearing, and a lot of us, when we think about the Black family again, many of us go back to that Moynihan report because he was one of the first people to sound the alarm on what was going on in the Black family. That report came out in 1965. At that time, a 25% out-of-wedlock birth rate was considered a national emergency. By 1985, we were above 50%, and since the 2000s, we've been up above 70%, and in some sub-demographics, so for instance, for Black women with less than a college degree, that non-marital birth rate is up over 85%. So there are a lot of challenges, and one of the things I want to say this really quick, sometimes people will ask the question, well, why the Black family? And my response is always, no other group's family issues go back to slavery. Now, whether we agree with that, contention or not, within our community, that's what the conversation inevitably goes back. But one of the things that my research has shown and other people have talked about, the last couple of days is, after emancipation, one of the first things that the formerly enslaved did was try to get their families back together. They took out ads in newspapers trying to locate family members, spouses, and children. In the early 1900s, a black man and black woman were more likely to be married by the age of 35 than their white counterparts. So the notion that the black family was decimated by slavery just does not hold up on the evidence. And in fact, I would argue that one generation of the welfare state and Great Society programs did what 250 years of slavery could not do, which was to break the black family apart. And part of the reason it did it is because it provided all the wrong incentives, particularly for low-income mothers. It incentivized them to break up with the fathers of their children and to marry the federal government. And part of this, unfortunately, was driven by ideology. There were people who were very much pro government support. So you have your Marxists, you have your feminists, you have people who want to deconstruct anything related to natural order. But one of the things that happened is that the feminists did not destroy patriarchy. They just created forms of patriarchy. And bureaucratic patriarchy is the worst one. So if you go to some neighborhoods in Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, DC, Atlanta, Cleveland, Chicago, Detroit, Oakland, you can find some low-income neighborhoods where there's not a single child being raised by married mom and dad. They're married biological parents. And in those instances, Uncle Sam has stepped in and played the role. And I think you would agree with me when I say that the government is an absent father and a terrible husband, because he has way too many households to support. Absolutely. So I think part of what we need to do is to get back to the basics. I love framing this discussion around the natural family, right? Because this is according to God's design. And one of the things that and what happens when you lose your sense of order is that you are vulnerable to attacks from outside entities. So let's just look over the last couple of years. The most popular, quote-unquote, racial justice movement in the last 50 years, Black Lives Matter. They come on the scene. One of their 13 principles is the destruction of the nuclear family. They said it. It's on their website. We didn't make this up. They said it. Now, here's the thing. BLM and their supporters are interested in black men for 3 reasons. Our votes for political power, our seed to create life. Because when they talk about black villages, they did talk about, that they wanted to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family, and then towards the end they talked about, in the black families principle, they talked about something to the extent that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. So they must have this idea that there'll just be these all-female communes where women are just raising all the kids. So they do want children. Our seed for life and our corpses to fuel activism. Because some of these women would have never spoken to George Floyd. They would have crossed the street when Jacob Blake showed up. They would have closed the door in Ahmaud Arbery's face. But once they were shot and killed by either a white police officer or vigilante, they would step over bodies in their own neighborhoods and say, I got to head to Wisconsin because this is a way for us to fuel, to make money and to fuel our activism. So I only bring that up to say, the family is the bedrock of any society. And any quote-unquote pro-black organization that tells you that we're going to reach the promised land without bringing the family back together is lying to you. That's true. Selling you a bill of goods. So I have some solutions in mind, but I want to stop there and back over to illustrious host.
Okay, so kind of as we're winding down here and asking Cindy down there to maybe expand on the idea as we're talking about solutions, that the future of the black family will be built upon the strength of black Americans and all Americans as a whole.
Right. I serve my job that feeds my family. I serve as a compliance
in serving to this position, I have seen the destruction where it was well-intended consequences of bringing and helping people. In actuality, it destroys people. Not just the family, it destroys people individually. Did you know that in the state of Wisconsin, if you live in low-income housing or you have government assistance, that you cannot have any assets more than $5,000? So how does that encourage one to save, to grow? And I think that if we work with legislators and try to get things changed to where it's a hand up, rather than constantly being that hand that's pushing down. And also within those low-income housing, you can't have the father or the man in the household. And in not having that, you don't have the structure, but it takes away, like he has said, the government becomes the father, the government becomes the head. But I always tell people what the government gives you, the government can take away. And so what I encourage those that are in the property that I work at, what I encourage them to do is to start working with programs that will help them to become more self-sufficient, to help them to become educated in the field of technology or other means that will give them a higher income. Because also in this program, if your household makes above the threshold, you're kicked out. So people that are already struggling end up struggling even more. So where there was a need or a desire to help with these social programs, those unintended consequences are becoming very detrimental to all families. So as we're preparing to kind of close, I pulled a quote from you that says, disaffected and alienated men of any color do not help build strong homes or communities. And obviously, we certainly believe that Black families matter and also that Black fathers matter. So kind of in your closing thoughts, can you just kind of talk a little bit about the importance of men contributing wholly to society in ways that ultimately will strengthen what they feel they're able to contribute to their families and their homes?
Sure. So let me say something in the spirit of bipartisanship, right? One of the things to President Obama's credit that he did that I can't think of another national Democrat who's done the same thing since then, is to speak publicly about the importance of marriage, family, and fatherhood. For all of his other policy faults, he did talk about that. And as many of you know, whenever he did, the people who would smack him on the hand were always his left-leaning progressive allies. And I think the party got the message. So now they don't talk about the importance of family. In fact, sometimes I'll do a word search on a candidate or a left-leaning organization at NAACP, Urban League. And if I put in marriage, guaranteed it's coming back with marriage equality. It's not about the two-parent home. In fact, they talk more about abortion than they do bringing the Black family together. And part of the reason I think it's important to talk about Black men is because the left has embraced the matriarchy. And that's why they're constantly telling Black women, you lead your community. No, you don't even lead your community. You save democracy. You save the country. So if you're a Black man and you're hearing that the women in your community save the country, they put on their capes, they become Superman. What does that make you? That makes you a damsel in distress. I'm not a damsel. So, and I'm not in distress. So a big part of what we need to do, I think, is to change the culture. Are there some policy tweaks that can be made? Absolutely. But a lot of this is around culture. It's about norms, values, and beliefs. And one of the things that I think, this is where Black men, I think, should take the lead. There's no way you can tell me that a young man who spends his entire life hearing the women in his community referred to as bees and H's, as female dogs and garden tools, is going to get to 20 or 22 years old and say to himself, man, I would like to make one of those to my wife. It's not happening. So until we are able to create a more think it's back. See? And we want silence. Until we're able to create a more positive culture, a lot of this stuff is not going to change. All right? So I think we need to deal with the types of images that we put out into the world. Because anyone who follows history knows the 20th century was not just a fight for civil rights. It was a fight for the black public image. It was about dignity. There were certain things you just did not do in our community.
Yes, that's true.
And if you did them, you were sidelined. You were not put to the front of the line. So media and culture play a part. Obviously, the church plays a huge part in terms of speaking about God's natural order. Like much of America, younger generations are less religious. You'll hear people say I'm spiritual but not religious. That's a red flag. But churches do play a part. Other institutions play a part. So, for instance, Hampton University has recently launched the National Center on Black Family Life. Hampton had previously launched the National Center on African American Marriage and Parenting back in the 2010s. I think every HBCU should make as a part of their mission to improve the relationships and bonds between black men and black women. Every one of them. But I'll give you an example of what happens now. Senate candidate from Louisiana, Gary Chambers, he shows up to Southern. Right? My mother-in-law went to Southern, a lot of my aunts, Southern alumni. And instead of telling the black men there, hey guys, you will never have a ratio of women to men in your favor that's better than what you have right here on this campus, he tells them that they should support abortion rights, because if they go out, to the homecoming party and something happens, you should care as much about erasing your mistake as the young woman you get pregnant. That's the type of leadership that the Democratic Party, when they come to our community, they push abortion with more force and more passion than the natural family. So there's a part of this that's political, there's a part of this that's policy, but a big part of this is about culture. And it's about changing our tastes and our desires. There's certain people that when they show up on the scene and they say they represent Black America, we should be there standing in the doorway and say, no, you do not. Thank you.
Intermission poses a threat to our nation's health. Climate change is an emergency. Democratic socialism. Yes, we're going to take your AR-15.
Our next guest is with Patriot Mobile, the Texas-based cell phone company that gave the signs currently on display. Here with more is the Vice President of Public Affairs, Lee Walk-Ons, and Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. But of course, we have extreme liberal leftists whose heads explode when they hear the national motto. But by and large, the majority of our feedback has been incredibly positive. And we're so proud to be a part of sharing the American heritage with our students. We love America's schools, and we love our students, and we want to help them and encourage them in any way that we can.
Good morning, everybody. Say hello to the black face of white supremacy. Don't laugh, we'll talk that title. I am Larry Elder. As some of you may know, I ran for governor in California. I got 3.5 million votes, and I'm giving strong consideration to running for president. I'll be announcing something in April. I'm also the proud producer of a two-part documentary called Uncle Tom. The first one is Uncle Tom, the second one is Uncle Tom 2. We aired it last night. A number of people in this room were in it, including Colonel Allen West. Shadow Jackson was in it. Bob Wilson, is he still here? He was in it. And the first one was about how black people, after slavery, despite horrific obstacles, KKK, Jim Crow, continued moving forward. In 1940, 87% of blacks lived under the poverty line, 87%. 20 years later, that number had fallen to 47%, a 40-point drop in 20 years. It is the greatest 20-year period of economic expansion for blacks in American history. Why? It was rare, I mean rare, for a black kid to be brought into the world by a father in the home married to his mom. In fact, around that time, it was more likely that a black kid would be brought into the world with a father in the home married to his mother than a white kid. Second reason, a belief in God and a belief in Judeo-Christian values. Third reason, a strong belief in entrepreneurship. Last night, if you were here, you heard Bob Wilson talk about all the businesses that were started by blacks in 1900, 1910, 1920, at a rate faster than even right now. And lastly, a belief in American patriotism. Even as America was not treating black people well, black people still kept moving forward. Uncle Tom 2 is about what happened to the civil rights movement. And in my view, what happened is we went from demanding equal rights, which is just and noble, into demanding equal results, which is an entirely different phenomenon. And now the civil rights movement has been co-opted by Marxists, by collectivists, by socialists, by those who want to redistribute income. To the point now it is an organization called Black Lives Matter that's been embraced by the left, including by Barack Obama. And as has been mentioned by Mr. Squires, on their website, they talk about the attack of the nuclear family, that is a European phony construct. And by the way, there's so many of us criticize that. Suddenly they removed it, but that's how they feel. It was founded by self-described trained Marxists. Marx was an atheist, wanted to dethrone God. It is an organization that attacked the police. I'll get to that in a second. So how have we gone from embracing God, Judeo-Christian values, embracing family, embracing patriotism, embracing entrepreneurship, to an organization sponsored by trained Marxists, and Marx hated capitalism, hated private property, and by definition, hated entrepreneurship. This is where we are right now. That's why we're having this convention. And I want to thank Eric and Greg for inviting me. By the way, it took me 30 seconds, 30 minutes to speak, and I have a little countdown here. It's not moving, so I want you to know that. So we can be here a while. Now I speak quickly, so you get an hour-long speech in a half hour. That's how I roll. The NAACP is the nation's oldest civil rights organization. And at their most recent annual convention, they said that they want to address 4 issues. First one was reproductive rights.
However you feel about abortion, I cannot tell you how happy I am that Roe v. Wade has been overturned. You know, a disproportionately high percentage of abortion performed on black females.
Yes.
How in the world is abortion rights a civil rights issue? Are you kidding me?
Yes.
By the way, Jesse Jackson, who ran for president in 1984 on a pro-life ticket, wrote in 1997, I urge you all to Google it, probably one of the most compelling pieces I ever saw on supporting pro-life. He talked about it from a moral position, from a character position, from a cultural position. It was an extraordinary piece. It's online. Check it out. 7 years later, all of a sudden, he renounced everything he said 7 years earlier. Why? Because he knew if he wanted to run, given the Democratic Party's embrace of abortion, he would not be considered a viable candidate. The second issue the NAACP wrote about was student debt relief. Most of the student debt is held by middle-class white people who've gone to expensive schools, often gone to graduate schools. So student debt relief will disproportionately benefit the very middle-class white people that people who talk about equity hate. Furthermore, people who've gone to college will, if not now, eventually make more money than those who did not. So those who did not are paying for those who did. That's a civil rights issue. The other one was, quote, voter suppression. You might recall when Georgia reformed this law, Joe Biden said, this is worse than Jim Crow, it's Jim Eagle, whatever the blank that is. And as you know, more blacks voted in Georgia than ever before. In 2008, for the first time in American history, the percentage of blacks who were eligible voters who voted exceeded the percentage of whites who were eligible to vote who did. So that's a civil rights issue. Furthermore, most blacks support voter ID.
That's right.
So if most blacks support something that the NAACP does not support, how is that a civil rights issue? And the final issue they said was important in their annual convention was police brutality. Nobody is defending bad cops. And Lord knows there are bad cops, as there are bad doctors, bad lawyers, bad talk show hosts, present company, of course, excluded. But it is a lie that police are using deadly force against blacks just because they're black. It is a lie. There's a Harvard economist named Roland Fryer. He's black, he's from the inner city, and he just knew because of the high-profile shootings of black people that police were in fact using disproportionate force, deadly force against blacks just because they're black. He did an extensive study. Results came back. He was so shocked he got rid of his staffers and got new staffers. Another study said the same thing. The police were more hesitant, more reluctant to pull the trigger on a black suspect, not a white suspect. I gave a talk before a Ohio State football team. Urban Meyer was the coach at the time. He invited me to speak. And he followed me on Twitter, contacted me, and he said, I'd like to come and speak to my team. We have a speaker coming in every month. We had a Black Lives Matter type speaker in, angered everybody. I know you feel differently. I won't tell you how I feel, but I want you to come speak to my team. I can't pay you anything, but would you do it? I said, Coach, you need to know something. He said, what? I said, I went to the University of Michigan. Huge, long pause. After he gathered himself, he said, can you not mention that? So I went there. And I'm talking to these people. There must have been about 100 people in the room. I'd say 70, 80% of them. I went over all my stats, and I said, you know, the police kill more unarmed white people every year than unarmed blacks. I said, name one unarmed white. I tried. Room was silent for 30 seconds. Nobody could pick them. Because when that happens, CNN doesn't give a rip. Dan Jones doesn't give a rip. MSNBC doesn't come in and give a rip. Nobody cares. As my mom used to say, when a white person gets killed by a cop, he's just a dead fly. I got a phone call from a woman named Gloria. She's one of my antagonists on the radio when I was doing radio. Now I do a TV show for Epic Times. Larry with EPOCH.com. It's an hour-long show, 4 days a week. Please check it out. So Gloria said, Larry, I listen to you all the time. You're always talking about how many unarmed white people you have. I can't think of a single one. I said, Tony Timba. In Dallas. Google him. White guy. Police mobbed him, laughed him, stood on. He's dead. There's a guy named Kelly Thomas in Los Angeles, Fullerton cops mocked him. He was homeless, he was mentally ill, and they hit him, they beat him. He's dead. The police kill more unarmed whites every every year in unarmed blacks. There's a website called policemag.com. They did a survey, and they asked people who were self-described as very liberal, how many unarmed blacks, did the police kill in 2019? 50% of those who self-described as very liberal thought the police in 2019 killed 1,000 unarmed black men. 8% thought they killed 10,000.
Wow. Wow.
What you ask, do regular liberals think? Well, self-described liberals, 39% of them thought the police killed 1,000 unarmed black men in 2019. 5% thought they killed 10,000. The answer, according to the Washington Post database, 12. This is the gap between what people think and what the reality is. And if you were that ill-informed, that misinformed, that helps to drive policy. There's something called the George Floyd effect or the Ferguson effect. There's a man named Zach Creighton, I interviewed him on my Epoch Times TV show. He used to be a data scientist at Thomson Reuters. Emphasized used to be. He got fired. Why? He was a proponent of Black Lives Matter, and he did a study to find out exactly what happened in towns like Baltimore, Chicago, places where there were these high-profile shootings, Cleveland, because what happens after that is the police are criticized. They pull back. They no longer engage in proactive policing. Even Rahm Emanuel, the then mayor of Chicago, criticized the police for going fetal, and not doing their job because of the fear of being accused falsely of systemic racism. And Zach Creighton documented what he called were excess deaths. That is, people who died who would not have died had the police done their normal proactive policing. Most of whom were the very black people that people like Black Lives Matter reported to care about. So it's not just false. The left believes a lot of things are just foolish and false. This is getting people killed. There are real world consequences to falsely accusing the police of engaging in systemic racism. One of which is the police, I'm talking to a lot of cops, have never been more demoralized. Many of them were retiring earlier or transferring to smaller departments. And as a result, virtually every single town, you have manpower issues. And as a result, you have longer response times, you have more bad guys congregating, and as a result, more time, crime is going up. And the primary victims of that crime are the very black people that people on the left report to care about. What they didn't say in these four categories that I mentioned was the 10,000-pound elephant in the room that all of us have been talking about this weekend. That is a large number of children who enter the world without a father in the home married to the mom. 40% of all American kids now enter the world with a father married to the mom. It is over 70% in the black community, 50% in the Hispanic community, and has been pointed out just a moment ago, 25% of black kids entered the world in 1965 without a father in the home married to the mother, which triggered that alarmist book called The Negro Family, A Case for National Action. I think it's a booklet by Daniel Patrick Moynihan. He thought this number was alarming. Now 25% of white kids enter the world with a father married to the mother. It is a national scandal, and our side is not talking enough about it. The NAACP didn't talk about it at all at their last convention. I've been doing radio and/or TV for almost 40 years. And in my career, I must have invited Jesse Jackson on my show maybe 50 to 100 times. He stopped even returning the call. Wow. Al Sharpton won't come on. Nancy Gordon won't come on. Louis Farrakhan won't come on. I didn't even try to call Obama. Why waste my time? Now, I mentioned some of these men because in the case of Jesse Jackson's mother was a teenage mom who was impregnated by the married man who lived next door. Jesse Jackson grew up in South Carolina. It was rare for a kid his age to be brought into the world with a father in the home married to the mother. He was taunted. Jesse ain't got no daddy. Jesse ain't got no daddy. Al Sharpton had a nice middle class life until his father ran away with another woman. Down to the hood he went. Louis Farrakhan. Farrakhan's mother was estranged from her husband, had a boyfriend. Took back up with the husband briefly, got pregnant by Louis, didn't want the boyfriend to know, and tried to abort Louis with a co-parent. Barack Obama's first book, Dreams of My Father, was all about his angst over not having his biological father in his home. The last time he saw his biological father, he was 10 years old. In fact, Obama lied to kids in elementary school and told the kids that his father was an African chieftain to justify why his father was away. This is the pain that this man felt. So all of these so-called black leaders either had no relationship with their fathers or a bad one with their fathers, yet rarely talk about it. And you're right, Obama did talk about what happened when you did not have a father in the home. His specific quote was as follows: "A kid raised by a father is 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, and 20 times more likely to end up in jail." And what's happened with our welfare state? Lyndon Johnson launched the so-called war on poverty in the mid-60s. He literally sent welfare workers door to door in the inner city, knocking on doors, advising women about the availability of benefits, provided there was no man in the house. Within a few years, the number of women on welfare shot up dramatically just in 3 years. And when Obama said things like that, as Mr. Squires said, he got criticized. Jesse Jackson accused him of talking down to black people. It is the #1 issue facing the black community. When I ran for governor, I had a lot of very contentious interviews, not too surprisingly. Tavis Smiley referred to me as anti-black. I interviewed with him and I said, "Tavis, I'm anti-black." He said, "You oppose reparations." I said, "Obama opposed reparations. He anti-black, he changed the subject." I had a virtual interview with around 6 or 8 pastors in the LA area. And everything was going reasonably well until I suggested that police brutality was not the primary issue facing the black community. It was the absence of black fathers. And then they went ballistic. And they began to attack me. And I said, "You people are religious leaders. You are role models. You set the standard. You help to set the dialogue. And you are ignoring the elephant in the room, the large number of kids who came to the world without a father and a home married to a mother." And they began telling me about all these instances that they had in which they were, in their opinion, mistreated by police. And I said, if there's something called leadership malpractice, you people would be on death row. I don't think I got your vote. The unwillingness to face this is doing a great deal of damage to our country, doing a great deal of damage, of course, to the black community. And if we don't talk about this, if we don't reverse this, our republic is doomed. And that is why we are here. Yes. I want to tell you a little bit about my own father. My father, I intensely disliked my father growing up. I have 2 brothers. We all felt the same way, so I didn't think it was me, I thought it was him. My father would whip out the belt whenever he thought we did something wrong. I thought he whipped us too often. I thought he whipped us for the wrong reasons. I thought he whipped us too long. I thought he was just full of rage and anger, and I had no idea why this man even had kids. And when I was a little kid, every single day, I envisioned the day when I would be big enough, strong enough to kick his butt. Unfortunately, my dad, when I'm 10 years old, starts a little cafe not too far from downtown LA, so I got to work for him. I didn't like working for him. My dad would yell at me. And when I say cafe, don't think about a room like this big. I'm talking about a diner, schools, 15 or so, 16 seats. So the grill's right there, so everybody can watch and hear everything that's going on. When my dad thought I did something wrong, he would yell at me, scream at me, and every now and then he would curse at me. And now I'm 15 years old, having endured this for 5 years. And I said to myself, the next time this man yells at me, I am going to walk out. No one defied my father, so this would have been an act of treachery unknown in my household. My dad yelled at me, and I was afraid to walk out. So I waited a few weeks, did it again, and I was afraid to walk out. But this time he yelled at me, and I took off the apron. By the way, this was during rush hour. A waitress had called in sick, so my dad was there by himself, and I walked out. My dad got home that night, not too surprisingly, he was not pleased, and he said, "Why did you leave?" And for the first time in my life, I defied my father. And I said, "Dad, I got sick and tired of the way he spoke to me, and I am not going to put up with it anymore." My dad paid me $10 a day plus tips. He rolled the $10 he owed me, threw it at me, so I lay on my bed. He walked out of my bedroom, and my dad and I did not have another conversation for 10 years. Wow. When I say not have another conversation, I mean did not have another conversation. Not even did they going to rain, how about those Rams? They were Dodgers going to make the World Series. I said nothing to the man for 10 years. Now we had a tiny little house, and I knew my dad worked late, and knew his hours worked, so I just made sure he and I were never in the same place. And I graduated from high school, I go to college in England, I go to law school in Ohio, in Michigan, I ended up getting a job in Ohio. All this time passed. Of course, I come home and visit my mom. I just made sure my dad and I were not in the same room. I did not live with the man for 10 years. Now I graduated from law school. I passed the California bar. I passed the Ohio bar. And I'm working for a large law firm in Cleveland. And I can't sleep. I'm 25 years old. I'm making the equivalent today of about $150K. I shouldn't live in Mars, and I can't sleep. And I knew it had to do with my dad. Not that they were thought we'd be friends, but I figured that I should clarify the air so I could sleep. So I called my secretary and said, cancel all my appointments. I'm flying to LA to tell my mother or my father I was coming because I didn't want my dad to prepare for this summit. I get to LAX, and I take a cab directly to the restaurant. I got there at 1:30. I knew he closed at 2:30. I walked in, and my dad was shocked to see me. I had a bag of luggage, and he said, should I put your luggage in that? I said, no, Dad. I'm only going to be here for 5 or 10 minutes. I want to tell you something. I was going to tell him what a rock dad I thought he was. I figured he taught me an ungrateful son, and then I go back to Cleveland and maybe I need to sleep. So I sat there for an hour. Dad said, wait until we close at 2:30 and we'll talk. I said, fine. So I sat there for an hour. I said, Larry, calm down. Don't tell him everything he's ever done, every big, everything. Don't tell him everything. Just give him a highlight of 5 minutes. Get out. My dad sat down, and I teed off. I spoke for 20 minutes nonstop. You guys know how I can go. I told him every spanking, everything he'd ever done to me, everything he'd ever said to me. Everything I could remember, I told him everything. The time he spanked me in front of my cousin Elaine, which was embarrassing. The time he spanked me in front of my best friend Carl, which was embarrassing. I told him everything. And my dad just took it. We were on 2 stools this close. And every now and then he'd lean over and replenish his coffee, and he didn't say a word, he just took it. Finally, I was out of ammo. I couldn't think of anything else. I was spent. And my dad said, is that it? You didn't speak to me for 10 years because of that? And for the first time, I saw my father cry. I did not think the man was capable of that function. And my dad said, let me tell you about my father. I mean, pause right here. I knew nothing about my dad's life other than I knew he was the only child. I knew that because we never got any Christmas presents from either of his relatives. And I met his mom one time. Outside of that, I knew nothing about my dad because I didn't like him. I didn't care about his life. It never occurred to me to ask him about his life. I didn't want to be like him. Why would I want to know about it? I knew nothing about my dad's life. And my dad said, you know your last name, Elder? I said, yes. He said, that is not my biological father's name. I said, what? Who's your biological father? I have no idea. I never met him. You never met your father? No. Well, who's Elder? Elder was a man who was in my life the longest. He was in my life about 3 or 4 years. And he was an alcoholic. He was physically abusive to my mother. And when I tried to stop him, he beat the crap out of me. He would come home and he'd work every now and then, give my mother the money because he knew he would drink it up. Come Wednesday, he wanted the money, she would give it to him, he'd beat the crap out of her and get it. He said, now I'm 13 years old, Elder was long gone. His mother could neither read nor write. My father doesn't even know his birthday, by the way. He knows the year because he enrolled in kindergarten. The teacher says, what is your birthday? My dad said, I have no idea. She wrote down May 25. So every May 25, I tell my dad that we have a 1 in 365 chance of being the actual day. My dad comes home at the age of 13 and starts calling with his mom's then boyfriend. She sighed with her boyfriend and throws him out of the house. Never to return. We're talking about a 13-year-old black boy, Athens, Georgia, Jim Crow South at the beginning of the Great Depression. And I said, Dad, what did you do? And for the next 8 hours, we talked about this man's life. He said, I picked up trash, I did anything I could. I cleaned barns, I did anything. And ultimately, I got a job as a Pullman porter. They were the largest private employer of blacks in those days. And my dad was able to travel all around the country. And this little black boy from Athens went to a place called Los Angeles, California, and he was stunned that you could walk in the front door of a restaurant and get served. And my dad made a note up, maybe someday I'll relocate to California. My dad said he always had packages of crackers and cans of tuna because you never knew in the South whether you're going to be able to get a meal. Pearl Harbor. My dad joined the Marines. Any Marines in here? Okay. I asked my dad if he was talking. I asked my dad as we were talking, why did you join the Marines? You know what I'm going to say? He said 2 reasons. Reason number 1, they go where the action is. Reason number 2, I love those uniforms. My dad was stationed on Guam. He was in charge of cooking for the colored soldiers. My dad can look at a cake and tell you what's in it. That's how good he is. War is over. He goes back to Chattanooga, Tennessee, where he married my mom to get a job as a short order cook. He walks around and he's told to his face, we don't hire niggers. My dad goes to the unemployment office. Then he says, you went through the wrong door. My dad goes down the hall, sees colored only, goes to the door to the very same lady who sent him out. She's wanting to know what the rules were. My dad came home to my mom and said, this is BS, I'm going to LA where I was before the war, and I'm going to get me a job as a short order cook, and I'll send for you. My dad goes out to LA, he walks around, and he's told, you don't have any references. My dad said, I need references to make pancakes. They treated him the same way in LA as they did in Chattanooga, maybe a little more polite. He goes to the unemployment office, this time he's one door, and he says, I have nothing, what time do you open? She says 9, what time do you close? She says 5. My dad's on his thing in the chair, he finds him. Dad sat in the chair for the whole day, came back the next day, around lunchtime, she calls him up, I've got something, I don't know whether or not you're going to want it. My dad says, of course I'm going to want it, I'm starting the family, what is it? She says, a job cleaning toilets and Biscuit brand bread. My dad did that for 10 years. He took a second job with a second bread company, cleaning toilets for 10 years. Cooked for a family on the weekend because he wanted additional money so that my mother would be a stay-at-home mom as she was until the youngest of us was in middle school. And he went to high school to get his GED. The man never slept, which was why he was so grouchy all the time. You get 20 minutes here, half hour here, 20 minutes here. Not day by day, not week by week, not month by month, but year by year. And you walk into a house with 3 grand much in voice, how are you going to feel? And so as my dad is speaking, he got bigger and bigger and bigger. And Larry got smaller and smaller and smaller. And now I'm crying. I said, Dad, can you please forgive me for judging you so harshly? And my dad said, there's nothing to forgive, Larry. You were a kid, you just didn't know. Just follow the advice I've always given you and your brothers. And my Republican father always said this, Democrats want to give you something for nothing. When you try and get something for nothing, you almost always end up getting nothing for something. He said, hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it, Larry. You cannot control the outcome, but you are 100% in control of the effort. And before you moan about what somebody did to you or said to you, go to the nearest mirror, look at it and say, what could I have done to change the outcome? And finally, my dad said this, no matter how hard you work, how good you are, sooner or later, bad things are going to happen. How you deal with those bad things will tell your mother and me if we raised a man. Amen. From that point on, my dad and I were the best of friends for the next 35 years. We had 35 great years. I wrote a book about this conversation. I wrote a book about this conversation called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours, because when the conversation was over, I fly back to Cleveland. I get a letter from my dad. He wrote me a letter of life. And it started out with Dear Son. So I went back and it started out with Dear Father. So it's called Dear Father, Dear Son, 2 Lives, 8 Hours. Best thing I've ever written. If you don't have time to read, a lot of people don't nowadays, just read the reviews. Extraordinary. Best thing I've ever done. The reason I tell that story is not just to talk about how difficult it is to be a father, and the fact that as a parent, there will be many times in which your kid is going to hate you. You're not there to be his buddy. You're not there to be his wingman. You're there to be his parent. The second reason I tell this story is to tell you that even as we've all talked about the devastation that happens mentally, financially, culturally with our fathers in the home, it is still not a death sentence as my dad's life proves. It is still about choices. You still have choices. This is America we're crying out loud. You have people in Haiti lining up for a shot, a lottery ticket in this country. If systemically racist? How do you explain how it is that Nigerian Americans outperform white Americans here in this country? This is America for crying out loud. You still have choices. Let me end with this. I also have a wonderful set of parents who always taught my brothers and me, no one can make you feel like a victim without your permission. And one day in high school, we read a poem by a guy named County Cullen. It goes like this: while riding through a Baltimore, so small and full of glee, I saw a young Baltimorean, people looking straight at me. Now, I was young and very small. He was no bit bigger, so I smiled. People touched his tongue, called me nigger. I saw the whole of Baltimore from May until September. Of all the things that happened there, that's all that I remember. The school I went to was Crenshaw High School. You saw the movie Boys in the Hood, that's my high school. Version of all black, teacher was black. She was angry about this poem. The class was angry, I was angry. She talked about the permanent stain on this kid's psyche, always feeling like second-class citizenship. And I'm walking home. I knew my mother was going to have a different take on the poem. I didn't know what it was going to be. So I walked in the kitchen. She was serving a big pot of greens and fried chicken wings, my favorite. Still my favorite, sorry. And I said, Mom, we read a poem in class. Let me get your reaction to it. She said, what is it? I said, it goes like this. Riding through a Baltimore so small and full of glee, I saw a young Baltimorean keep looking straight at me. Now, I was young and very small. He was no bit bigger, so I smiled. But he poked out his tongue and called me nigger. I saw the whole of Baltimore from May until September. Of all the things that happened there, it's all that I remember. My mom took a spoon out of the green pocket on the side and said, Mary, what a darn shame he allowed something like that to spoil his vacation. How many wings do you want? May God bless the Black Conservative Summit. May God bless Project 21. May God bless the Black leaders who are in this room. May God bless the United States of America. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
You all, please give Larry another. He's from my hometown. He's from Los Angeles, although we went to different high schools. But tremendously proud of him. And I tell him, I said, just the other day, I want to grow up and be just like him. All righty, well, we're going to take a 25-minute, 30-minute break, and we'll have everyone to get up and to